Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Scott Helfstein.
Good morning. I have to say it's a real privilege for me to follow what is a group of experts and pioneers that have really led the way in moving the U.S. government forward on many of the issues we've discussed. For the last year, the Combating Terrorism Center at West Point has been working on a project looking at the interconnectivity of terrorist and criminal networks. About 3 years ago, we found ourselves formulating a question. There was a general sense that terrorists and criminal networks operated largely in isolation across geographies. And yet, our research we were doing suggested that there was a fundamental flaw in that line of thinking. And so, about a year ago, we got access to a private company proprietary database for financial compliance. It has dossiers on individuals involved in illicit activity, among them known associates, largely coded off of course records, both foreign and domestic. And so we set up something of an experiment. We took 40 top transnational smugglers across narcotics, arms, and human smuggling, and said, we wonder who they connect to. Sure enough, they connected to 754 individuals. 92 of them were high-profile terrorists. That's over 10%. Well, in a decision that I would largely regret for much of the last year, I said, I wonder what happens if we see who those 754 people are connected to. 1,900 people later, the number of terrorists in that sample, starting with transnational criminals, quadrupled. And so when we look at this 2,800-person network, we don't find isolated clusters of terrorists and criminals across different geographies, but a global illicit network that is almost fully connected and has 11,000 relationships. Just to give you a sense, the terrorists are red dots, narcotics traffickers purple, organized and other financial criminals yellow, and then suspicious individuals are green. And I'm almost certain that we are underreporting the connectivity that actually exists. And so since today is about empowerment, I think it's really important that we revisit the fundamental assumptions that are underlying our plans going forward. Because this would suggest that we have set up an artificial construct between terrorist and criminal networks that might not exist, and that operating along those assumptions is going to lead us to some probably suboptimal solutions. It also begs the question of why. Why didn't we really understand this fully? Why didn't we appreciate this connectivity? And I would argue it's because we've always started by defining these problems according to the motives, which are fundamentally different. And that's led us to say, well, of course, terrorists want to use criminality to survive, but why would criminals want to get involved in terrorism? Because that's just going to attract unnecessary attention. Well, if we look at their means, we find that they have very similar ways of operating. And in fact, both of them want to deny others the ability to govern the space in which they operate. This is about denial of governance. Criminals don't want to provide social services, but they want negative political control. They want to make sure others can't. And who is wonderful at undermining governance? Terrorist groups. And so what we see is the arbitrage of political violence. So yesterday, we heard that arbitrage was the process of taking advantage of market inefficiencies in order to make almost riskless profits. Well, in this case, terrorists and criminals are using political violence to exploit inefficiencies in governance, to improve their effectiveness and lower their risk of operations. Thank you.